Well, hello again and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2022 Solar Show. This afternoon, we're delighted to share with you working with Alberta's wire providers, which we're going to hear from Monique Soborin of Fortis Alberta, Daisy Lamb of ATCO, Shane Fraser of EPCOR, and Jamie Thompson of NMAX. Our moderator this afternoon will be Neil Cumming of Solus Energy, who I will be introducing shortly. Please note that we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn the captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. My name is Heather McKenzie, and I'm the Executive Director at Solar Alberta. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that while Solar Alberta serves members and the general public from Treaties 6, 7, and 8, I am presenting to you today from Amiskwaciwaskahegan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including Papaches, Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. Please note that we will be recording this session and making it available on our website and YouTube channel following the show. We were delighted to have so many people register for this week and for this event. To start, we'd like to thank the City of Edmonton Change for Climate for sponsoring the 2022 Solar Show. And we'd also like to thank Solus Consulting for sponsoring this session today. Solus Energy is also going to be our moderator today. We are happy and grateful to have them both as sponsors. Following the presentations this afternoon, there will be a Q&A period in which you can all participate. The formal Q&A will run until about 1:15 the hour, and then we're going to invite you all to join us for a special additional 15 minutes in a more relaxed Zoom meeting Q&A at the end. The link for the extended Q&A will be posted in the chat at the end of the formal Q&A, and I'll draw your attention to it at that time. So please make sure to check on the link before leaving the webinar. The entire session will wrap up in an hour and a half. As this is an online conference and trade show, I'd like to encourage you all to check out our online trade show during the week. We have listed here all of the wonderful organizations who are participating in the online trade show. To view their exhibitor booths, which include a listing of key solar-related services, contact info, and video introductions, please click on the link in the chat. During our formal Q&A period, we will be using Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions in the Q&A section. Also, please click on the little thumbs up symbol to vote up questions that you like. Before we move forward, we're going to do a quick poll just to get a sense of who we have joining us today. Let's see here. I'm going to launch that poll. And if you could take a minute and answer the poll questions, it helps our presenters a lot to get a sense of who's in the room. While you're completing the poll questions, I encourage you to take a minute and pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any info you're comfortable sharing, contact info, in the chat now, and also throughout the event. That way others can look you up on LinkedIn and hopefully start building some relationships. I see your responses coming in, looking good. Okay, so we've got quite a few industry professionals. I'm not surprised. We are offering this as an industry-oriented session, but nonetheless, many curious individuals as well. Thank you for joining us. A lot of first-time Solar Alberta attendees, wonderful, and a few who have come before. And it looks like a lot of you are going to be heading to our Navigating ComGen panel tomorrow and affordable residential solar financing. I'm going to end that poll now and share the results briefly so that all of our panelists can have a look and see who's in the room with us today. Great. What a great attendance. Stop sharing that. And now for a little bit about Solar Alberta. Did you know this is actually Solar Alberta's 31st year of operation? Solar Alberta is a not-for-profit society that is dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub. Our membership is made up of over 350 individuals and businesses. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers and suppliers to connect with their customers and clients. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on the slide. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs such as the Solar Seminar Series, multilingual Solar 101 workshops, including one in Hindi that's planned for February 23rd, and of course, this incredible annual solar show. We're very proud to share that in 2021, our solar show reached people from over 60 different municipalities and counties, which you can see on this map. We've got them all a little pin drop there. With over 2,600 session attendees registered for our solar show this year, we anticipate excellent reach across our province and around the world once again. In addition to our live online programming this week, we also have great content available on our website from our 2021 show that is still very relevant today, including one on solar PV recycling that we get a lot of questions about. We've spaced our sessions out this week in such a way that you can easily view one of the other sessions in between our live webinars this week. And for those of you who are solar industry professionals or transitioning into the sector, you'll be pleased to learn that we have also now made available all of the paid content from last year's solar show via our new pay per download training service. You can go to the training video link in the chat to find those affordable workshops. In addition to some solar show workshops that are industry oriented, this spring we will once again be running a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Our 7 courses are online Tuesday and Thursday evenings on 3 to 5 nights over 2 to 3 weeks. You can already register for all of our courses at the link provided in the chat. Those include the brand new course about working with Alberta's wire providers that will actually be taught by our host, Neil, today, and it will expand on some of the content from this workshop. Also, if the course you are interested in isn't offered at the time that works for you, you can now pay to download most of our past course content. These recorded courses are available alongside our paid past solar show workshops in the new solar training videos section of our website. Just want to take a quick opportunity to encourage you to join Solar Alberta as a member. For this week only, we are offering a discount on our individual and student memberships to celebrate having turned 30 in 2021. From February 7th to 11th, you can purchase an individual or student membership with a 30% discount. The link to become a member is also being placed in the chat. On March 16th, we'll be hosting our annual general meeting, and I want to invite you all to sign up as Solar Alberta members, attend, and elect your new board. There are a number of vacancies to fill on the board this year. If you're interested in applying to serve on the board, you can do so through our website until February 18th. And if you can't quite commit to board work, but you're looking to support us in another way, please consider volunteering or donating. Volunteers are eligible for free membership and $100 off of a course each year after committing 15 hours. The links to sign up as a volunteer or donate are also now in the chat. And last but not least, I want to take this opportunity to mention that this past year, Solar Alberta won an Emerald Award. As part of our Emerald Award, the Emerald Foundation kindly made a short documentary about us. And after the session, you can feel free to check it out in the link we're sharing now in the chat. We're really proud and thankful to have been recognized in this manner for the second time in our long history. And now I'm delighted to get the session underway by introducing our sponsor and moderator for today, Neil Cummings, who will take it from here. All right, Neil, feel free to steal the screen.
Great, thanks, Heather.
Neil, I have a whole bio I was going to read about you right now. Let me do that first before you steal the screen. All right, Neil Cummings joined Solus Energy in 2021 as a project manager. He serves as the primary contact for select clients and provides in-depth oversight of Solus Energy's projects to ensure high-quality products are delivered to clients in an effective and timely manner. Neil has an in-depth understanding of the distribution and interconnection network in Alberta, having worked with Fortis Alberta for 11 years in distribution planning and renewable energy projects. While at Fortis Alberta, he also served in the Emerging Customer Solutions Group and looked at new business markets, including energy efficiency, energy storage, and GHG projects. He was the project coordinator for the 5 megawatt Waterton Energy Storage Project, responsible for executive reporting, budgeting, scheduling, and leading the project management team. He is experienced in regulatory engineering, project management, and construction management. He has extensive experience in solar, wind, and distribution. He also worked with developers for interconnection with the Alberta Electric System Operator. Now introducing Neil Cumming. Thanks very much, Neil, and take it away.
Great, thank you, Heather. And thanks for Solar Alberta for organizing this session, which I know will be extremely helpful for our participants on the role of the wires providers play in connecting solar energy to our grid. I've been lucky enough to work with all our panelists before, who have over 50 years of combined experience in the Alberta electricity industry. They're definitely experts in their field, and they've prepared materials today that will answer a lot of the most common questions that are asked on interconnections, and they'll also highlight common challenges that they see throughout the interconnection process. They'll also identify some useful tools to help site your project, size your project, and manage a seamless interconnection process. So before I get started, I, along with some of our panelists this afternoon, reside in Calgary. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, region number 3. Before we get started with the content, the panelists have asked me to share a brief introductory slide on the distribution system in Alberta, just a quick overview. So let me share my screen here. So first, I'd like to start with a quick introduction of Solus Energy. Solus is a private woman-owned consulting firm founded in 2009. We are a trusted provider of commercial and technical advisory services to the electricity sector, generators, investors, government agencies, EPC contractors, industry associations, and equipment manufacturers. Our team's experience in the energy industry spans 19 years, 3 continents, and over 50,000 megawatts of electricity generation development and construction projects, including distribution level systems and transmission projects. So on the panel today, we have representatives from the 4 largest distribution facility owners, which are kind of highlighted here. ATCO serves the suburban and rural north part of the province, as well as areas near Lloydminster, Drumheller, and Jasper, as shown here on the slide in the light blue. NMAX serves the city of Calgary. EPCOR serves the city of Edmonton, and Fortis Alberta serves the suburban and rural southern part of the province, as shown in green. These are the largest 4 distribution facility owners, but they're not the only DFOs in the province. There are other municipal-owned systems, which include the cities of Red Deer, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat, and the towns of Ponoka and Cardston. And there's also a number of rural electrification associations, or REAs, in Alberta, which are rural member-owned utilities, which have shared service territories with ATCO and Fortis Alberta. One more point of clarification is that our panelists today come from the regulated distribution facility owner arms of their respective companies. Some of these companies will also own transmission facilities in their service territories, and some will have separate generation and retail businesses. But the panelists today are speaking on behalf of the distribution companies and sharing their expertise on how they manage and build the distribution system in a safe, reliable, and economic manner for the benefit of Albertans. So all the individual distribution systems were built to perform the same general function. However, these systems were built individually to serve slightly different customer bases with sometimes differing methodologies and timeframes throughout their growth. So significant efforts are being made by all companies to coordinate processes and best practices to try to make the interconnection process kind of as consistent as possible. But there are inherently some unique attributes of each system, which the panelists will highlight throughout the presentation today. Also, before we get started, I hope you had a chance to hear the Microgen 101 presentation yesterday, which gave a great overview of the history of microgen in Alberta and how it's evolved to what we have today. If you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to check back on the Solar Alberta website and watch the recording. Much of the presentations today focuses on microgen, which I think a lot of our audience today is on the microgen side. However, there will be some discussion on other connection options, which include small scale generation, community generation, and distributed generation, also called distributed energy resources. So without further ado, I have some introductions to share. I will introduce the panelists in order of their appearance. So we will start with Monique Saborin, who is an electrical engineer. Monique has worked in electrical and telecommunications utilities for 30 years. Her experience includes power, radio, and fiber optic networks. She is currently involved in distribution energy resources, including microgeneration and the interconnection of distributed generation projects up to 25 megawatts. Her main area of focus over the years has been developing the standards and that technologists and power line technicians use for project design and construction. Monique is especially interested in how effective leadership can mobilize large teams of people to implement new work methods. And she is passionate about sharing knowledge and strategies that can lead teams through change. So welcome, Monique. I'll go through all our panelists and then we'll throw to them at the end. So next we have Daisy Lam. Daisy Lam is a supervisor of the ATCO Electric Key Accounts team in Calgary. Her team is focused on providing solutions to customers within the industrial and generation segment for connection to ATCO Electric's transmission and distribution network. Daisy has over 16 years of experience in the Alberta electricity industry in transmission line engineering, regulatory, commercial, and account management and customer service. So thank you and welcome, Daisy. Third, we have Shane Fraser. Shane is the manager of customer engineering services at EPCOR Distribution and Transmission Inc. with 7 years of utility experience. In this role, he leads a team of engineers, designers, and planners who assist customers in connecting, upgrading, or changing their electrical service connections. He's also the author of EPCOR's Customer Connection Guide, which guides the connection of new services in EPCOR's service territory. Shane is a member of EPCOR's Grid Modernization Committee and has personal interest in building, heating, and transportation electrification. So welcome, Shane. And last but not least, we have Jamie Thompson. Jamie Thompson is NMAX Power's DER Interconnection Key Account Manager. He has 15 years of experience in the Alberta electricity industry. Jamie's role reflects his deep understanding of the grid and passion for serving customers. He completed his diploma in electrical engineering technology from Nova Scotia Institute of Technology. Throughout his career, Jamie has worked in various roles focused on power system design and customer relations. In recent years, Jamie has focused on supporting customers and adapting to the accelerated growth of DERs, or distributed energy resources, in Alberta. So welcome, panelists. Due to time constraints, we do have some representatives from some of the other distribution facility owners, so I encourage you to stick around to the end, and hopefully some of these individuals can stay around for the informal Q&A at the end. So please stick around at the end. And with that, Monique, I'll invite you to share your screen and get us started today.
Thank you, Neil. And I will, oh yeah, you have to press share. Okay, there we go. We're all so used to Teams. Hello, everyone. Beautiful day. Sorry, let me just open my speaking notes on the other screen because I just had a moment of panic thinking, what am I going to say? So I'm just going to introduce myself first. As you can see, Monique Saborin. I'm an engineer with Fortis, Alberta, and senior engineer in standards and projects team. Really been doing a lot of the distributed energy resources work in the last 5 years, and also I did some in 2001 when I first came to the company too, back then and when I was in the planning group. So a lot of familiarity with this world. As Neil pointed out, our service territory was 2/3 of the area And before I get into that, I wanted to give a safety moment just real quick. I went through the car wash the other day and remembered to clean the inside of the window as well, because when the sun hits, it's just not good. You can't see a thing. So I just wanted to remind everyone that stay safe. So yeah, so going to our service territory, I wanted to highlight, as Neil did, that we're 2/3 of the territory and are connected DERs, like mostly distributed generation, the DGs. We have 300 megawatts connected. And for the microgen, as we'll be highlighting more today, we have 53.9 megawatts since 2009 that we've been keeping track of, out of the 12,000 that Fino mentioned in the province yesterday. So just wanted to highlight that. So yeah, this is Fortis, Alberta. So as an overview, this is what I'll be discussing. So, I can't remember if I did put in the chat my contact information, but I'll do that after I lost access to the chat now that I'm presenting. But I'll put my email address. I did put it in there, and I'm on LinkedIn if anyone wants to find me, Monique Saborin. So the overview of what I'll be talking about are the distribution facility owners, customer generation types, hosting capacity, and DER interconnection. So for the first one, distribution facility owners. As Neil showed, it was nice to see that diagram. It's always useful. We wanted to talk about how we are the same and how we are different. How we are the same is we all, our primary function is safety for the public and our employees, the power line technicians. Safety for everyone, that's number one. And we all work together and always discuss and follow the standards and develop new standards all the time and make things more clear. So that's how we're the same. And for DERs, distributed energy resources, we're the same in our requirements for single line diagrams being stamped for all distributed generation and for the larger MGs. And as Betsy explained yesterday, larger MGs are 150 kilowatts or over. So they have more criteria than the smaller ones. And we require studies for the DGs, distributed generation, small scale generation, and for the large MGs over 150. So that means that we'll be asking for some more than just the basic application. We do some engineering studies and always capacity, as I'll get into a little more, capacity studies. So how we're the same is we also meet together regularly. We've been meeting together since early 2017 to talk about DERs in the province and discuss, coordinate overall planning, best practices. The purpose of it is to be more consistent. We've heard that from the consultants and customers, is that because of going to all the different distribution facilities owners and getting different answers in the beginning, we are working more and more to try to get those answers to be the same and more similar. How we are different is we each have our own intake program for DERs. Online resources are available, and mailboxes are available for each of our companies and the utilities. And they'll be put in the chat near the end. Neil will be putting those in the chat because we have web page information online, and we all have mailboxes to mail for questions for microgeneration and distributed generation. And on the website will be the process as well as the technical part. So in the urban areas, EPCOR and NMAX and some of the other urban utilities, they're seeing more of the rooftop solars. With ATCO and Fortis Alberta being more rural, we get a real mix for the distribution generation. It's not just solar, we get natural gas, biomass, all kinds of things. But we also get large solar farms because of the land. We also get a lot of those rooftop MGs as well. So we just wanted to highlight the differences between the rural and urban utilities. It's kind of an interesting distinction, even when we speak monthly, to notice our differences. So yeah, next slide is customer generation types. And Neil will be putting a link here for our, there's a customer generation options table available that all the utilities worked on, we discussed and made sure it meets all our, we covered everything because it describes the regulations available for the different types of distributed energy resources, DERs. As Betsy described well yesterday, the Alberta Microgen regulation and AUC develops the rule, and we all worked on the guidelines, and that's posted on the AUC website, as Shane will point out later. Small scale generation regulation, community generation, and distributed generation. So this table that Neil will put the link in the chat, sorry, is very handy to see all the different types and all the requirements for each one. It just really lays it out well. Hosting capacity is something that all the utilities are very familiar with for generation, because our service territories all have different areas and different areas of generation capacity, mainly based on the cable sizes and different things and how much generation is already on. So the availability, a lot of utilities have posted a hosting capacity map. And some have, and some utilities will deal with it like project by project basis, but hosting capacity is something that's addressed by every utility. Small MGs, the small ones, they just go on people's housetops, they just go through with less studies. The hosting capacity, FortisAlberta has a queuing process, and we have that because we have a lot of volume, and we wrote about a queuing policy and put it in our distribution interconnection guide on FortisAlberta. So that's been outlined formally with FortisAlberta. Everyone has a queuing process, as I'll get into a little more in a minute, but not as formally. It's being dealt with project by project. So for interconnections, DER interconnections, how it's done for each facility is, as I said before, all utilities have guidelines posted on their website. We cover the process, how to apply. Our technical standards are all posted, and we all have mailboxes for questions and applications. And the microgeneration, Shane from EPCOR will be sharing the microgen guideline. And Neil will be putting those links in the chat as well, because they're very, very useful information on the AUC website, as well as all of our utility websites. Queue management, as I stated, we formally put it in our DER interconnection guide that FortisAlberta has written, and it's on FortisAlberta's website under our distribution generation page and our distribution generation library. So if you want to see the complete guide and the queuing requirements for the distributed generation, that's all there. And then please see our websites for everything that's required. As I said, Neil will be putting links in the chat for all of our websites, for all the main utilities and our mailboxes. So thank you, and I will hand this over to Daisy next. There we go.
Sorry, I seem to have lost the Zoom window.
It's a little fun adjusting to Zoom, I know.
I think we still need your visual too, Daisy. We're missing you. There you are.
Okay. Does that look right?
You bet.
Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. So thanks, Monique. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Daisy Lamb with ATCO Electric. I'm in our key accounts group, and we handle some of the interconnections for generation connections for ATCO Electric, both on the distribution side and transmission side. So we deal with all different sizes of generation coming onto our system. So I think, sorry, I'm having trouble with the control here. which screen, sorry, which slide are you seeing right now?
We're saying how can generators connect?
Okay, so there we go, okay. So yeah, so this is ATCO Electric's service territory. We cover, it's funny that Monique says that they cover 2/3 of the province. I think ATCO thinks we cover about 2/3 of the province, but you can see we have, most of the north region here, as well as central east, as well as some isolated communities like Jasper. So we do have quite a vast area of service territory that we serve. And that's mostly rural areas, but we also do have some major municipalities within our service territory. So we have, challenges unique to ATCO. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, the different generation connections that you can have on our system. So, okay, so this is a little sketch of our distribution system here. So this is at the distribution voltage, and generators can connect in different ways. So Monique had mentioned the table that Fortis Alberta put together about the different options to connect. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some different scenarios in which we get a lot of questions about, and that might help you choose how you're going to apply to the distribution owner. So under microgeneration, the intent of connecting as a microgen is really for self-supply. So you would use the energy that you produce and then export any excess consumption on your site back to the grid. And also you can have just a regular load site. So if you add those two together, you could actually apply as an aggregated site, which means that you can supply energy to the grid that matches the consumption of both of your sites. And then there's also distributed generation, and this is a pure merchant type situation where you're exporting all of the energy that's produced by your generator onto the grid. And within distributed generation, there's also like a subcategory of that, which Monique had mentioned. If you're renewable or alternative, you can actually apply to be a small scale generator. And with the community benefits agreement or statement, you can also apply to be a community generator. So there's benefits to doing that. I think there's some sessions on that from Solar Alberta's solar show. So I won't get into too many of those details, but I just wanted to talk about the different ways that you can connect. Now, more specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about this aggregated sites option. So this is the microgeneration regulation, which defines aggregated sites as 2 or more sites that are located on property that are owned or leased by the same customer. They have to be connected to a single distribution feeder, and they also have to be enrolled with the same retailer, with each site having the same rate of energy, electric energy on the site itself. So what that means again is that you can size your generator up to the combined total of your 2 sites. Say it's 2 sites, you can install a generator that can supply both those sites. So I'm going to show a little scenario about whether you can aggregate your sites. So in this scenario, we have one customer that has 2 sites. One is, say, a farm site. You own a warehouse or maybe a Quonset, and your annual consumption is 40,000 kilowatt hours in 1 year. And your second site, maybe it's your house, you're using 6,000 kilowatt hours. So if this customer wanted to install solar on their sites, they could install a generator at each site. So one behind each meter, each matching the annual consumption at that site. Or alternatively, if you wanted to aggregate these sites, if they're the same customer, they're on the same feeder, they're on the same, they have the same retailer, and they're on the same rate of energy supply, then you can aggregate them. So what that means, you could install one solar system that's connected to one of the sites, and the total allowable production out of that unit could be up to 46,000 kilowatts per year, because that's the sum of these 2 sites. And now the energy that flows back to this system, it would be called the parent site, and any of the credits could then be applied towards the child site. So that's what aggregated sites is about. We get lots of questions about that. So I'm going to go on with another example of, well, how can I apply this in a different scenario? So we often get questions about condo buildings or apartment buildings and whether or not, that condo building owner can install solar on the rooftop. So here we have 3 separate customers within this building. They're each using 5,000 kilowatt hours a year. You also have the building owner or the condo association that uses 15,000 kilowatt hours per year. And that's for the common areas like the hallways, the parking lot plugs or the elevator. And they want to install solar to this whole site. So can the building owner install something to serve the whole building? So this little X came up a little bit sooner than I wanted, but is it the same customer? So in this case, all of these sites are registered to separate owners. Assumedly they're on the same feeder because it's one building. And is it the same retailer rate? At this point, it doesn't matter because they don't meet that first criteria, right? We also don't know that, the choice of retailer is the same. That's up to everybody, each individual. So how can the building owner or the condo association, how can they connect? So they can still apply to be a microgen, but that would mean that they can only serve the common load that's billed to this one owner. So, this could offset any of the consumption used by the common areas, or alternatively, they can connect as a distributed generator. So what that means is you could apply to be, again, a merchant generator, and the community could even apply to be qualify as a small scale generator or even a community generator. So under this regulation, there's no limit on the sizing that you can apply for, subject to the hosting capacity, which you'll have to work with your wires owner on. But there really then is no limit. And with that community generation qualification, again, you would need to show that there's a community benefit. So that means there's a social, environmental, or economic benefit to the community. That would be part of your application to the AUC so that they could review that and grant you that eligibility. So the last scenario I'm going to talk about is community connections. So are these considered aggregated microgen, or can I connect as a DG? So in this scenario, we have a municipality or a community that owns multiple sites, a fire hall, arena, maybe a store, friendship center, school. So we're going to use the test of the criteria under aggregated MG again. What is unique about this scenario is they want to install generation. And so they actually have to choose a plot of land that's out of the community in a nice green field, enough for their proposed generation to handle. So going through the criteria again here, is it the same customer? Yep, it's one municipality or one community that pays all the bills. Is it the same feeder? So in this little example, I made it so that all of the facilities are not on one single feeder, right? You can be in the same tight area, but it could be on a different feeder. So you'll have to check with your wires owner around that. Here, so say we wanted to just aggregate these 3 sites, say it's the same retailer rate. So can I still do this if we're only just talking about these 3 sites? So the one other piece in the regulation that talks about supplying sites is adjacency. So it talks about whether or not the generator is located on property that's adjacent to the property where it supplies the energy. So in this case, because there's a road or an easement, more than just a road or an easement, sorry, separating these facilities, the answer is no. So part of the regulation, it states this, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that part and see whether you meet the criteria of having this generation offsite from your general sites. So the other option that this community has is to apply as a DG. So the small scale generation regulation was actually built to address this situation. How could communities install generation on the system? And that would require the community benefits agreement or community benefits statement. And then there's no restrictions on where the generator can be located. So in this scenario, you have a couple of different options, but again, work with your wires owner to see what the situation is and how you can connect. So the last slide that I have is we get a lot of questions around when is notification required to the ISO for distributed generators or distributed energy resources. So again, the ISO is the Alberta Electric System Operator. They manage and operate the power grid at the provincial level, so at the transmission level. So when we have a generator that applies to connect to the distribution system, they connect here. Your DFO, your distribution facility owner, we will study the impacts of that generation coming onto the distribution system, do all the studies that Monique was talking about, ensure that any scope that needs to be completed before you connect is done. Now, when there's outflows from the distribution system onto the transmission system, we as the participant into that transmission level, we need to actually apply to the ISO so that the ISO, who's the transmission planner, can actually do those same studies on the transmission system. So this usually happens when there's more generation fed onto the distribution system than there is load on the distribution system. So again, when you apply to the wires owner, they will let you know if we need to go into that process. And again, that process is, it's a more complex process. It usually takes a bit longer. So I would encourage any developers that are developing more utility size scale or even larger than microgen, so larger than 5 megawatts. Yeah, you probably want to have that conversation with your wires owner about what those steps look like. And that's all I had. So I'm going to throw it over to Shane Fraser from EPCOR, who's going to talk about sizing your MG systems and EV, I think, right?
Yes. Thank you, Daisy. So I believe you guys can hopefully see my screen. Yes? Okay, Heather, I'm assuming so. All right. So thank you, Daisy. Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending our session today. As Neil noted in my introduction, I have a personal interest in microgen and solar. I personally have an 8.5 kilowatt solar PV system on my 1970s bungalow in West Edmonton, which I'm slowly renovating towards net zero. So far, I've reduced my energy costs by about 70% over the last 2 or 3 years of renovation, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to zero. Like many of our customers, I'm getting an electric vehicle and plan to refuel that vehicle with my solar panels eventually. And like so many of our customers who are getting an EV, I've been waiting months for mine to show up. I'm hoping I get it before the sno melts so I can enjoy cruising around in it all summer and not adding to the carbon in the atmosphere. So yeah, I get the benefit of not only helping our customers navigate this world, but I live and breathe this in my private life. Today I'll be speaking on some of the more challenging aspects and questions aspects about applying for generation and specifically microgeneration. But before that though, let me tell you a little bit about EPCOR. Many of you likely already know EPCOR and what we do, but for those who don't maybe live in Edmonton or know, EPCOR designs, builds, owns, and operates electrical, natural gas, and water transmission and distribution networks. We have water and wastewater treatment facilities and sanitary and stormwater systems. We operate in Canada in the 3 Western provinces and Ontario, and in the United States. But EPCOR's corporation is wholly owned by the City of Edmonton and her citizens. Today, I'll be speaking for EPCOR distribution and transmission. As you can see on the slide that's up, we have a series of substations and several thousand kilometers of transmission and primary distribution lines in the city, and have approximately 14,000 customers in the city, and account for about 13% of the province's total energy consumption. As of when I wrote these slides, which was a few days ago, we had 2,140 microgen sites in the city of Edmonton, which accounted for about 23 megawatts, 23,000 kilowatts of installed capacity. As Monique mentioned earlier, EPCOR has a lot of many small generators, most of which are residential solar. But there are some large commercial and industrial generators throughout the city. We also have the E.L. Smith Solar Farm in Southwest Edmonton, which we'll be soon adding to our system. Now let's get into some of those challenging aspects of applying for generation that I was speaking to. So We're often asked how much consumption can be included for owning an EV when trying to size a new microgen system. It's not surprising, as EVs and solar seem to go hand in hand. What could be better for the pocketbook and the environment than refueling your car with the sun? Customers tend to run into two hurdles when including EVs in their system sizing. The first hurdle is that the EV needs to be owned by the customer at the time of application. This is usually verified by the distribution company by getting a copy of the provincial registration or the final paid bill of sale. But there have been times that we're able to accept EVs that haven't maybe been delivered yet because there is a substantial non-refundable deposit and a well-defined delivery date, in which case the utility may be able to consider it. And in these situations, it's best if you reach out to your distribution company early on to see what evidence they'll need from you to be able to include that in your calculation. The second hurdle is, what will the vehicle's annual energy consumption be? On the face of it, it's a pretty easy calculation. You just multiply your mileage by the vehicle's efficiency. This assumes that maybe you're charging all at home or only a portion at home. And so you should add a factor if you expect to be charging at work or third-party chargers like Tesla superchargers or Electrify Canada sites. The biggest challenge is determining how many kilometers you will drive each year. This really is what drives your energy consumption. Some have looked at the mileage on their past vehicles and divided it by the years of ownership. So if on average you drive 23,000 kilometers a year in your old Honda Civic, it's probably a good indication that you'll probably drive 23,000 kilometers a year next year as well. Others have done summation of their daily driving commutes. This is something I've looked at personally for my system. I might not always be going into the office, especially in this new, post-COVID world. So I'm looking at how far I drive to and from the office, how many times a week, and what my typical weekend driving needs will be. And just keep in mind that the typical personal annual mileage in Alberta, according to Natural Resource Canada, for a typical daily commuter car, is about 15,200 kilometers. So that's the calculations I've provided there, with 85% home charging and mileage that you would receive from Tesla Model 3 long range. Okay, next I'm going to get into, solar tends to be the energy's choice for net zero construction. But the whole equation of annual energy consumption changes when you begin heating your building and using electricity. The type of heating, whether it's electrical resistive heating, electrical hydronic heating, or heat pumps, and the building's envelope all come into play when you're trying to figure out this value. This is where modeling and calculations by an experienced industry professional are needed. You don't want to undersize your needs when the next chilly January comes around and you find yourself not able to meet your 20-degree temperature you'd like to have in your house. Nor do you want to excessively oversize your needs, wasting money building more than you require. The good news is that Natural Resources Canada has created a program called Hot 2000 that professionals can use to right-size your system. It provides outputs as to your electrical and natural gas energy consumption annually, and it allows you to split the heating sources if you're looking at using both. Providing the Hot 2000 report to your distribution company is typically all that's needed to support your annual energy consumption numbers. The Hot 2000 can also be used to determine an existing home's energy consumption. Some have used it where there's no historical consumption to draw from. And this is typically the program that's used to obtain the EnerGuide rating. So when I renovated my home, for instance, I reached out to an energy auditor who ran my home through the system, and they were able to predict how much energy my home used before I did my renovations. And I was quite surprised at how accurate it was. Alternatively, though, especially for some of those large projects which maybe don't fit well into the Hot 2000 model, most DFOs, actually I think all of the DFOs, will accept engineered stamped calculations. And I'll get a little bit into more about stamped calculations later on in the presentation. But again, this is typical of large commercial and industrial projects. So you may have a good idea of what your energy needs are today, but what about tomorrow? Will they be the same? Often our needs change. The pandemic has more people working from home, so perhaps your home consumption will go up, but your business consumption will go down. Maybe you're welcoming a new family member to your home or buying an EV or a hot tub, which will increase your consumption. Perhaps someone will be moving out, or you'll be getting some new LED lights, driving down your consumption needs. The fact is our energy needs change year to year, and customers often ask us about expanding their system to meet their increasing growth. Oddly, no one's ever asked me about reducing the generation system yet, but hey, maybe someday. To allow for future growth, if you think you will need it, there's some options that we've seen customers employ. First, they plan their solar module layout with consideration for future panels to be added. This way they can optimize the final layout and avoid the extra cost of moving the originally installed panels. Some customers have installed additional or larger conductors. This way, it's just a matter of tying into the existing wires instead of ripping apart the building a second time to run new ones later. Often, customers will use microinverters instead of string inverters. This way, they don't have to worry about room for another large string inverter. And it's typically easy to tie on more panels and microinverters to such a system. If they do go with a string inverter, however, they often will allow physical space for an additional inverter in their electrical room. This is the approach that I took. Or alternatively, they will replace their original inverter with a larger capacity one later. Next topic I want to talk about is site IDs. This is a common question we get. Where is my site ID? The site ID is a unique number that identifies your electrical service at your building. It can be found on page 2 of your bill, and provide an example on the slide there of kind of what it looks like. You can see the site and the column with the numbers there. Another good place to look for it is on the utility net site catalog. We'll be providing a link in the chat to where you can find this, but it allows you to look up the site ID by address. This can be particularly helpful for installers, consultants, and contractors. It also has other information you may be looking for, like the name of your wire service provider, the WSP. This will be typically EPCOR, Fortis, NMAX, ATCO, or possibly one of the other smaller DFOs in the province. Provide the lot, block, and plan number for your property in some cases, and it may also include the Rural Electrification Association, or REA name. Yeah. So last topic I'm going to talk about today is drawings and authentications. This topic's more geared to the installers, contractors, and consultants in the room. But often we get asked, when do I need an engineer to stamp my drawings, reports, or calculations? The Engineering and Geoscience Professions Act of Alberta and the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta, or APEGA as they're commonly called, generally determine when and what needs to be stamped by an engineer. Authentication, which is the official name for stamping, is a legal requirement under provincial law. No one, not the utility, not your client, not the municipality, can waive this legal requirement. Someone not asking for a document to be authenticated does not relieve you of your obligation under the Act to have it authenticated. There are exceptions, though, for when authentication is needed, and they're given in the Act. And I'll be getting into those in my next slide real quickly. It also should be noted the authority having jurisdiction, which is typically the municipality, may require authentication of a document that would be typically excluded, and this is at their option. You'll see that a lot of municipalities, I know here in Edmonton, the city will require drawings even for small homes to be stamped if there's structural changes to the building. Now, I'm not going to get too far into this slide. This is what we call the friendly version, which EPCOR will be including in its March release of its new customer connection guide. But it provides a easier to read version of what's in the Act. In short, certain occupancies, as defined by the building code, are exempt under certain circumstances. Typically, the building can be no more than 3 stories tall, and it must be under defined total gross area. I would encourage you to review the Act yourself and consult with an engineer as to whether your particular project needs to be authenticated. I would also like to reiterate that although there may be an exclusion in the Act for you, this doesn't mean that the authority still may not require authentication. Talk to your specific municipality or distribution company before assuming these particular exceptions apply. And with that, it brings us to the end of my portion of the presentation. Lastly, I'd like to highlight the microgeneration notice submission guideline on the AUC's website as a resource for more information. It's a resource that's definitely worth taking a look at as you prepare your application to add MG to your home or business. And it's an invaluable resource for the installers, consultants, and contractors. A link to this will be provided in the chat as well, and I highly recommend you bookmark it. This marks the end of my portion of the presentation. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions at the end. Now over to my friend Jamie Thompson at NMAX in Calgary. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, excellent. One of the two ain't bad. So sorry I couldn't get the camera to work, guys. You're not missing out. I have my slide, and is everyone able to be able to see this?
Your slides aren't up yet.
Oh, sorry there.
Just steal the share from me.
How's that?
Great.
Okay, great, everyone. Okay, thanks, Shane, Monique, and Daisy. Good job. My name is Jamie. I'm with NMAX, and today I'm going to be talking about appropriately sizing your MG. Thank you, Neil, for doing the land acknowledgement for us. I can go beyond this slide. I left it in there just in case. So I'm Jamie Thompson. I went to school in Halifax, graduated in 2007. I went to Nova Scotia Institute of Technology. It's the same thing as like SAIT or NAIT in Alberta. I have, this was my school on the top. There's the old dump I lived in near the Citadel, and there's the map. So about NMAX, we are Wires owner. We have wires in the city of Calgary as well as Maine. NMAX owns and operates 1,512 megawatts of generators and offers a range of innovative electricity, natural gas, and energy services to more than 690,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers. We have one owner, and it's the city of Calgary. So there's 3 divisions: the transmission distribution, the regulated wires business for NMAX, for Versant Power and NMAX Energy. I am working on behalf of NMAX Power. How many DERs? DG rated capacity installed is over 30,000 kilowatts, and MG installed is over 22,000. MG units installed over 2,060. So today I was talking about sizing your MG. Generating a unit means a generating unit of customer that is intended to meet all or a portion of the customer's total annual energy consumption at the customer site or aggregated sites. So this is from the MG regulation. The intent of this is for us when we do our reviews is to ensure the design philosophy is consistent with the MG regulation. How do we do that? We build relationships with consultants to establish design parameters and create consistency across for all consultants in our jurisdiction. What else can we do? We help and guide and collaborate with applicants to ensure successful interconnection. what is the gold standard for 1 second. The gold standard is considered to be so that if you build your PV system, you look at the previous 12 months worth of consumption data, you size your MG and submit your application. If you use this method, you can have confidence that your MG will be approved. And as well as design, select appropriate equipment, and then have confidence. So establishing and working relationships with consultants. So whenever we get a new consultant that comes into our jurisdiction, we try to give them a shout, reach out to them, give our contact information, let them know what our expectations are, what they can expect from us. These are the things we try to do to build relationships. And typically when we call to have that first contact with the customer, really what we're trying to do is we're just trying to see if you're aware of the MG regulations and the MG guidelines. So the way we see it at MX is, you see the slide here with the picture of the batter? I'm a baseball fan, so I thought it was okay to use this slide. This strike zone is the target, should be the target size for your MG. The umpire would be the AUC. They sort of set the strike zone, and then we just try to frame it up for you, for the consultants, and you try to deliver strikes on your MG sizing. So I hope that's a good analogy. I don't know, hopefully you guys follow that one there. And there we go. So there's some cases where the gold standard can't be applied. Some of these, and I won't get into it because Shane did such a great job, but one example would be when you get an electrical vehicle, obviously things can change. I use that NetZero home, but Shane did a great job explaining that, so I won't use that. But if, let's just say, for example, your home is an infill and there's no historical data, we can help. We can, if you provide us with like building plans or something, we can look at square footage, and we can also look at other homes in the area of the same or similar size, and look at historical data to try and help you out. You might have your own method of doing calculations, which might be appropriate, but yeah, we welcome all those different types of sizing arrangements. Something else, if you've done any lifestyle changes in your home, like for example, like you're adding a heat pump, that would be a way that you could increase the size of your PV system without the historical consumption. I know, and we like to say the gold standard. The gold standard is basically for any home that hasn't changed. You've lived in the home for a number of years and nothing has changed. Ideally, that's ideal for sizing. And that's about it, guys.
Excellent, thanks, Jamie. So that concludes the presentation section of the panel today. I'm going to share my screen again. Looks like there's lots of good questions rolling in, so we'll jump right into the Q&A. I just want to throw some contact information on the screen that everybody can copy down. I'll also I'll ask the panelists if they would be comfortable sharing their slides. So if you're looking for a copy, I don't think we'll be disseminating them, but send me an email. My email's on the bottom of the screen there, and we'll jump right in, or I can send you those. So let's get into questions. I know there's a lot of great questions rolling through, and we've got about a few minutes left. We might extend a little bit depending on our progress here. We might extend the Q&A session and delay the informal Zoom webinar or the Zoom meeting link a little bit, but let's jump right in and get started. So first question is a good one. I'm going to read it verbatim. It comes from Craig. The microgen regulation establishes a 14-day period following a customer application for the owner or the wires provider to dispute an application. As an installer filing applications on behalf of customers, I've never had an application disputed, but I've often find that I am waiting much more than 14 days for approval. So it's kind of a two-part question. As wires providers, what are your targets for the review and approval turnaround? Are delays simply due to the volume of applications or other factors? And then number two is, what can customers and installers do to streamline the Microgen review and approval process?
I'd be happy to answer this one, Neil. If you're okay with that. You know, speaking for EPCOR, we target always to provide approval within the 14-day window. The challenge that we sometimes run into is incomplete applications, or applications that have inconsistent information on them. Maybe you know, what you're showing on your single line diagram and what's in the Form A don't match up. And when we end up in that situation, we need to start asking questions, because we want to make sure the paperwork's done right, and that we've got good evidence so we can you know, move your application forward. Thinking about the applications that kind of just breeze through the process, definitely some of the larger installers in the province have the best success, because they have dedicated staff and well-built systems and checklists to make sure everything's included. And the ones that have the most success on the large applications that we get are the ones that engage us early on. You know, the Form A and the application isn't the first time we've seen their project. They've come to us early on. They've talked to us. You know, we've helped them line everything up, and the Form A application is really just a paperwork exercise at that point. We know about what they need, and they know about what we need. So you know, I would say build some checklists. You know, put dedicated staff on it, and talk to your DFO early on if you have some unusual case or unusual ask.
Yeah, if I could add to that too, I echo what Shane said. You know, if you have your application, it's all done, filled out properly, and we have all the information we need, it can go pretty quick. Where sometimes that 14 days might not be met is for some of the larger MGs that we see. So anything over 150 kilowatts at ATCO would require a review from our planning group, just to ensure that, you know, there's no additional scope that needs to be done before you can connect your Microgen. I would say anything that's over you know, a few hundred kilowatts is going to take a bit longer, because we might have to do in-depth planning studies. And often what we find too is that we might say, okay, we can connect this, but there's this large scope that you have to do before you can connect. And so we're also finding ways to try to reduce that scope and see how we can get the generator connected without having a large upgrade required. So I would say if anything over definitely a few hundred kilowatts, it's going to take some time so that we can complete like an in-depth distribution planning study.
Great. Next question we have from Michael, and this is probably for Monique, since it's in Fortis Alberta service territory. Someone had applied for a 10 megawatt distributed generation project and discovered there's only capacity for 2 megawatts at the site. So the question is, can we expect to see an increase in capacity on the grid for renewables in the future? And maybe just more broadly, can you just chat about kind of hosting capacity, the Fortis Alberta hosting capacity map that's on your website, and what information is available to help kind of customers understand what's there? And then I guess, and the future development of the system in these areas?
So yeah, thanks for the comment of the hosting capacity map. We can put a link in the chat for that as well. The hosting capacity map on Fortis Alberta, and some of the other utilities have it as well, gives an idea, the first idea before even applying, of what's in the area. So up north, as someone, the person, Michael, it sounds like, was asking the question, the conductor size is sometimes smaller, and so and if you're farther away, there's less capacity for generation available. So that's shown on the hosting capacity map. You get an idea of what you're going to see, and then when you Neil mentioned, also there's a queue as well, and that gets described on the project list, and who might be ahead of you. So once the hosting capacity is seen on the map, and a pre-application consult is optional. It can be done for $500 an application, just to have a chat with somebody and just discuss what the options are, get it, explain what's on the hosting capacity map, the project list, what might be need to do if your project's large enough to go on the transmission grid, just that kind of discussion overall. And we also see in our DER interconnection guide, that's all spelled out as well. If there's the distribution side, what kind of questions to ask. There's a part called key matters that just, it's a section we added in just if you don't even know what to ask, if you don't know enough not to, to not even know what to ask. That's what that section's for. Now, your other part to your question, Neil, about future is that's being looked at from many different levels. Oh yeah, I think it was Betsy, or I can't remember, Fino yesterday, who explained, the Alberta system, or maybe Daisy, I think, did earlier, the overall, of course, the government, and then the Alberta Utility Commission, and then the ISO, Alberta Electric System Operator, and then us DFOs. And so what happens is when customers come on, we might have capacity in our system. If not, we have to build to it and work with the transmission system. But in the future, there was a distribution system inquiry. It's on the AUC website. It's all been laid out where they asked the utilities. We all attended. They asked customers and consultants, what are the issues? And that's all been outlined. So that's been addressed. Well, it's been heard, and next it'll be addressed. And then we'll have to decide as a province how to handle that.
Right. And maybe I'll just as expansion on that, and I'll open it up to the other panelists. I know on the transmission system, Alberta has an unconstrained transmission system, right? Where we will build transmission infrastructure to ensure that generators and can connect in an unconstrained manner. Maybe can you comment on the differences between the distribution system planning and transmission system planning? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I was going to suggest Monique or Daisy. You guys are probably more.
We don't have transmission, Shane. We just have distribution. Oh. But I can talk, on AltaLink's behalf if you want.
How about just the differences between the transmission system planning, which is done centralized by the ISO with an unconstrained mandate, versus how distribution companies
I see where you're going, Neil. So I can speak on
there.
that. Yeah, based on and it's also all spelled out in our DER interconnection guide. So thanks for pushing me on that, because even though we're only distribution, we work with AltaLink quite closely, who mirrors our service territory. And when we do have STS, Daisy and I always remember the acronyms. Anyway.
Supply Transmission Service.
Supply Transmission Service, that's STS. So when there's STS, which means it goes beyond our distribution system to the transmission grid, then we bring in the transmission facilities owner. In our case, that's AltaLink. ATCO has different parties of ATCO, and Max does as well. I think EPCOR does as well. We're the only ones that don't, but we work with AltaLink quite closely. And we do a study with them on the transmission impact, and that's all outlined. And these are for more distributed generation, but potentially one day a microgen could follow that too, a large microgen. And if they have STS, that's all systematically studied from the distribution owner, the transmission owner. And then, as Neil mentioned, ISO has, Neil, 6 phases in their project steps. Mm-hmm. And our steps mirror theirs. All our utility steps mirror theirs, because they once it goes to the transmission level, they track all the different stages to get to generation. So for us in our utility, we say energize, which we've always said for 100 years. When you get power to the site, that's the first step. But now with DERs, we say in service date for export and generating onto the grid. So that's a second step, and that has commissioning in between and many different stages. So that's all outlined by us utilities on our websites, or as Shane said, and Daisy has mentioned, and Jamie, contact us.
Perfect. So several layers of planning, it sounds like, and yeah, distribution is different than transmission, although they are sort of intertied, right, at the substation level. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. This is from Mark. The presentations talked about instances where microgen is not possible, that connecting it as a distributed generator, either a small scale generator or a community generator, is a good alternative. And from Mark's experience, this is not in fact usually true, as the current process for connecting a smaller DG system, let's say less than 10 megawatts, still requires the completion of hundreds of thousands of dollars in studies, and approval timelines can be up to a year across all the DFOs. So can you, I guess, comment? The question is, did the DFOs have plans to streamline DG interconnection processes and lower costs for smaller systems in order to increase uptake? And if not, why?
I can take this one. I think Mark probably talking about what I was suggesting in my presentation, talking about if you can't connect as an MG because it doesn't follow the regulation, that you might want to consider connecting as a DG or a community gen. Now, we follow the same process. It's a very similar process when we're intaking either MG or DG, but it really has to do on a scale of your connection. So like we had suggested, the studies are required depending on the size of your service and what hosting capacity is available on the system. So our engineers will run generally for smaller MG, there's hosting capacity available. So there's no work that needs to be done, which is why it potentially is a lower cost option for MGs to connect. However, that's not always the case. Even if you had 100 kilowatts and there was no capacity at that site, you might actually be responsible for any upgrades that are required. So it's just more common that there's going to be available capacity at those lower levels. And then when you're connecting as a DG, under the Electricity Utilities Act, generators are responsible for any incremental costs to connect to the system. And that's why you'll see, like, for generators at like a 10 megawatt capacity, there will likely need to be upgrades required, or at least the very minimum, some protections and controls on our system that the generator is responsible for covering. So, it's just a proportion, I guess, of how much scope is required to connect that level of generation. And there is really no mechanism for us at this moment to reduce those costs specifically to encourage, I guess, like small scale generation. But that's why that Small Scale Generation Act regulation does exist. I believe that if you qualify for community generation, there are some economic benefits to be had. So I think if you qualify as a community generator, the cost of your meter will be covered by the utility. So that's the important part, right? If you qualify for it, I encourage you to apply. It probably brings down the costs by a little bit, and that, anything that can help to get your connection online.
Daisy, I just wanted to say on the small scale gen, the utility provides the meter, but we charge. It's stated in the regulation that we charge for the meter. And we are expected to provide the meter data management, but we can charge. And what I've heard from some customers, because I thought, oh, so what's the benefit of going small scale gen and community gen? And they said the fact that hiring the utility to put in the meter and do the meter data management is useful, right? So they found that a benefit.
Yeah, and also I think the power pool, the balancing pool, has some responsibilities there as well for the.
Yes, and they didn't have to hire a third party to do that as well. So that was another benefit.
Excellent. Next question. It's around energy use tools. And this is from Jode. Has any of the Alberta-based wire providers considered developing a total energy use intensity or total energy use tool, such as the one developed in Ontario Association of Architects? There's a link that I can share. The comment is, this would help home and facility owners visually understand their energy use and PV panel requirements, as well as PV and EV charging system installers and wires owners when communicating requirements and address basic system sizing questions. So I guess just generally, is there any tools that you have developed, or are you looking at developing any tools about sort of total energy use to, I guess, around the MG sizing question? Jamie, see your hand pop up. Do you want to handle this one?
Sure, I can speak to what NMAX is doing. We, as far as sizing, we expect that the consultants know a lot about how to size their PV systems. But in terms of us understanding what it looks like behind the fence, we have a couple of pilot projects, and the homes that we selected for the pilot project were homes typically with EVs, with PV systems, and maybe some other load profiles that would be unique. What we did was we put an AMI meter, a mini AMI network, and I believe we're also using the HomeSense monitoring device to record consumption throughout a home. So that's what we're doing to try and understand consumption in homes, you know, on a per device, I guess, level. So,
Shane, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'll jump on that too. You know, these tools that are online are fantastic, and I'm not familiar with the one you've quoted here, but I'm definitely going to take a look for it. But I would encourage you to engage a professional who has experience in this, because every home and every customer's needs are so different. You know, not everybody drives the same distance. Not everybody has the same insulation in their walls or the same quality windows in their house. And you know, there's some good tools out there to get you an idea of the size and scope you're looking at, but it's a poor substitute, I think, probably for, you know, hiring a professional who really knows how your home is going to perform and your behaviors are going to affect your energy consumption in our province with our weather and the unique challenges that we have here. So I would encourage you to reach out to a professional before you make any solid plans there.
Thanks. Shane, we got a couple that probably would be best addressed by you. First is from Darren. Are the wires providers factoring in the global chip shortage and long wait times for brand new EV models when considering whether an EV can be included in a solar PV system's annual generation?
Oh, I wish, but unfortunately, you know, the wireless providers, you know, we have to follow the regulation. And the regulation says that we're allowed to include your annual consumption for things that you own and have today. And as a result, you know, there is no real allowance in the regulation for delays caused by, you know, global chip shortages or, you know, blockades or bad weather in BC. You know, none of that's factored in there, and that's where it's so important that if you are buying an EV, you know, that you talk to your dealer and make sure that you have that paperwork in hand showing that you own it before you include it in your calculation. Or if you can't own it, then at least reach out to your wire service provider and talk to them and see what evidence they need. You know, if somebody is going to put a substantial down payment on a vehicle, it's non-refundable, and you know there's a delivery time, you know, that might be enough, as long as that delivery time is, you know, within the next couple of months and not, you know, well, who knows when the Cybertruck's coming out. So, you know, these are the challenges that DFOs have, is we have to follow the regulations and we're not really allowed to work outside of them, but we're definitely happy to have those conversations with you.
Excellent. Then the next two are not solar or necessarily interconnection related, but they kind of take off from your presentation, Shane. And these are from Kevin. Is there much successful experience with air-based heat pumps in residential Alberta winters, especially when temperatures are 15 Celsius or colder? And then as a follow-up to that, there's a question on renewable heating systems that customers are looking to get off of natural gas, and is the air-based heat pump the best bet, or are there other alternatives?
You know, I'm by no means an expert in these technologies. I definitely have a personal interest in them, and I do know people have employed different systems successfully in Alberta. Again, much like the other answer, reach out to professionals who have experience in this. There's also the Eco Solar Home Tour, where you're able to maybe see some examples of individual people in Alberta who have employed these technologies and hear their personal experiences, which might help you decide if that's a technology that's a good solution for you.
Excellent, thanks. one more question, and it's kind of around the microgen regulation. This is from Alex. Will the excess generation credit be forfeited after 12 months? And that, I guess, applies to the microgeneration unit that's sort of overproducing during the winter months, or I guess during the year. And if there's any excess credits at the end of the 12-month term, will those be forfeited? And Shane, looks like you are the first to raise your hand.
Yeah, I'll answer that one. You know, in regards to this, the best thing you can do is probably reach out and speak to your retailer. The credits and those funds are managed by them, and they can speak to their specific processes around them. But yeah, if there are excess credits after 12 months, the regulation says that they will be paid out to, I believe, the customer at their request. So please reach out to your retailer, and they're probably the best person to answer that question for you.
And Neil, I just want to add to that just a little bit, because Betsy and Fino touched on it yesterday in the MG 101. The regulation states that after 12 months, there will be a balance. And that, for the intent of the regulation, was because the intent is to balance the kilowatt hours of load demand with kilowatt hours of generation. That's the intent of the microgen regulation, and it's to offset for customers. And that line in the regulation was put in because none of us expect 100% accuracy with the kilowatt hours load and the kilowatt hours generation. And so we allow some flex, and we don't expect it to hit right away. And so that intent was to offset that little bit of difference. Now, what Fino pointed out yesterday, and he pointed out the Market Surveillance Administrator, MSA, did a report last year observing that some people are generating more than using, and that's not meeting the intent of the microgen regulation. So that's been noted. It hasn't been changed in policy, but if that continues to happen, then policy might be opened up and relooked at.
Excellent, thanks. Let's keep rolling here. This question is directed, it's from Terry, directed to EPCOR and NMAX. So Shane or Jamie, if you wanted to jump on this one. The question is, to upsize for a type 3 charger or heat pump at a home, the electrical code requires upsizing the service from 100 amp to 200 amp service. Who is responsible for the service replacement from the distribution transformer to the home if you're upsizing the conductor from number 2 to a 4-aught, say? Jamie?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I can take that one. At NMAX, I don't speak for all the other wires owner. I don't know how they apply investment policy, how it works exactly. But on our side, there is an investment level, and the demarcation point for underground conductors is considered to be the property line. So I guess we would own the cable up to the property line, but the cost, anything over and above and beyond the investment level, would be by up to the customer. So that would mean trenching. That would mean from the property line to the house, and then any costs that went above and beyond trenching from the alleyway to the pad mount transformer. Typically on an overhead system, it's just the wire. It's not a complex upgrade. It's typically just the wire, and then it's a couple $100, and I believe that would be the investment would cover all of those costs in almost every case.
And I'll add on to that just a little bit. You know, EPCOR is much the same as NMAX, but before you go upgrading your service connection, you know, talk to somebody an electrician, a master electrician, and have them do what they call the load calculations. It's calculations that they have to do usually to get their permit, and they'll determine what your needs actually are. You actually need a larger service, and there are devices energy management systems that will actually let you take other circuits in your home. So let's say the circuit to your dryer, your clothes dryer, or your electric range and stove, and actually share that with your EV charger. And that can be a real cost-effective solution to necessarily getting a upgrade to your service, especially if you're in an underground area. The cost of getting that service upgraded is largely dependent on what's between you and that green transformer box that's hopefully on your lawn and not your neighbors or down the street and around the corner. So, you know, look at these other alternatives. You'll probably be happier with the price that you get, and you know, they're really excellent solutions. And keep in mind that you know, the average person's commute is, you know, only, you know, 10, 20, 30 kilometers a day. You don't need to do a lot of charging to make an EV an effective solution for your daily use. You know, having a you know, 30 amp charger is usually more than enough. You know, I hear people say, I want the 60 amp, I want the, you know, the 80 amp, and sometimes more than what their car will even accept. And that's where, you know, it's kind of the gold plating solution. It's really nice and sounds great, but it's might add a lot of cost that you just don't need at the end of the day.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt you guys. This is amazing. And the questions are great and the answers are phenomenal. But it is time to go over to the Zoom meeting room. I know we were intending to do that 15 minutes ago, but I just wanted to make sure we maximize this webinar opportunity. So for all of those who are able, we're going to actually post a Zoom meeting link in the chat now and have a little bit more of a relaxed Q&A. We're still going to have Neil moderating it, so you still need to put your hand up. You can't go interrupting our wire providers here. But we want to see your faces. We want to hear your voices. So you'll be able to pull your questions over if you haven't had them answered yet to the Zoom meeting room. I'm going to need you to click on that link in the chat, and we'll open it up in a few minutes. You'll have to leave the webinar to come there, but it's our secret mechanism for getting you to a nice chat room without any Zoom bombers. So thank you very much for this formal webinar. Really appreciate Solus and Neil for moderating and sponsoring today. And of course, the 4 wire providers, you know, you guys are amazing that you pulled this all together. It's just phenomenal, better than we ever dreamed. So thank you so much for your formal presentation. Looking forward to some more relaxed conversation for the next 15 minutes for anyone who can stick with us. And thank you also for extending as you're able. I'll stop talking now and let y'all click on the link.